On the Zion Williamson front, there has been no shortage of news. I feel like I have been updating you guys on this entire situation for the longest, and you know that there is no better place to find Pelicans news than from one of the biggest Pelicans fans on YouTube. I follow every Pelicans game insanely closely, and I follow a ton of beat reporters and writers. Recently, I dropped a couple of videos. One of my recent videos was on the Pelicans having to teach Zion Williamson to walk again. And this was major because it showed that the New Orleans Pelicans understood that Zion Williamson had some things that he could work on to make sure that he is able to play a long time in the NBA. Earlier in the season, again, it seemed like the Pelicans were somewhat neglecting the problems that were at hand. The GM or the vice president was seen saying that they just want Zion to be Zion and they don't want to change a thing. I think somewhere along the lines, they had a breakthrough and they saw that things had to change. Hence the Pelicans changing the gait of Zion Williamson. This is going to be so good for the long term of his entire career. This shows that the Pelicans are invested in Zion and they're not just going to send him out there. And what they were saying earlier in the season was just lip service, or they flat out just didn't know what they were doing. Regardless, it's good to see that they are on the right track. And as a matter of fact, we have more news on the Zion Williamson front. Now, to be clear, when I said the Pelicans were teaching Zion how to walk again, they were teaching him ways to walk more effectively, to reduce the stress that he could put on his body. And the same with running. These little things have long-term effects, again, that help players' careers. Look at Stephen Curry. This was somebody with a lot of early career problems with his ankle, and those problems could be attributed to the way he was running, the way he was cutting. Steph ended up working with some exercise physiologists and physical therapists, and he was able to start to use the proper mechanics. Again, this was huge for Stephen Curry's career. The same way that the Pelicans working with Zion Williamson to become a more effective and efficient walker and runner is going to be huge for his career. Don't underestimate the stress that somebody that is nearly 300 pounds can be putting on their joints and their entire body. Now, what I haven't showed you guys is this video of Zion Williamson dunking. He is close to a return, but this is not the news that tells us he's close to a return. We actually have some major news, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But it was good to see Zion dunking and looking healthy in that video. Shams just dropped a huge update that Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans are on the cusp of a major breakthrough. But before we get into that, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You will not want to miss another GETLIKECOOP video. And that's facts. I'm trying to get to 200,000 subscribers so I can go full time and bring you guys daily content. So be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Down in the comments below, I want to know what videos you guys want to see, but also I want to know what your favorite video from me has been so far, so I could see if I could notice a trend, and if I find that trend, I'll be able to bring you guys more content like that and perhaps make that content even better. We're only just getting started. I want to become the best NBA YouTuber out. But yo, be sure to follow my IG handle GETLIKECOOP. You will not want to miss another post. This update from Shams is easily the biggest Zion Williamson update yet. Shams just tweeted a video that said, the Pelicans' #1 overall pick is on the cusp of a breakthrough. Zion is expected to return to his first practice shortly after the new year on Wednesday. So that means that Zion Williamson is literally itching to return. He said, I'm told both sides are hopeful for a January season debut for Williamson. They have been cautious with Williamson the entire time, ever since he suffered the torn meniscus in his knee in October that sidelined him indefinitely. The Pelicans have went through an education process for not only themselves, but for Zion. Now, this is possibly the biggest part of everything. They say that they have been working with him physically and we've never seen anything like Zion before. Not only have they been working with him physically, but the Pelicans have worked on him with everything, including his eating habits and his diet. Now, if you go back to one of my earlier Zion Williamson videos, you'll know that I talked about Derrick Rose and how Derrick Rose said that his diet was the most important thing for him in getting back healthy. Derrick Rose said this. Rose said that he was playing too bulky and that him fixing his diet and shedding some pounds was ridiculously huge for him. I think it's amazing to see both sides so proactive on trying to make sure that Zion Williamson ends up good for the future, not only of the franchise, but for the NBA, and of course, also for Zion Williamson. This guy seems absolutely amazing. He seems like a star that the NBA absolutely needs. And I know a lot of times you guys don't see me talk so animated, but I'm just so excited as a Pelicans fan and a fan of Zion Williamson to see him getting back on track and having things work out. Because the fact of the matter is that we've seen so many memes and we've seen people comparing Zion Williamson to bust already, and none of it has exactly been Zion's fault. I'm not going to lie, early on I was a little nervous that the Pelicans didn't know what they were doing. We are talking about a franchise that has been bad for a while, and I really don't want to call them incompetent, but they have had some really bad moments. Not only have they had bad moments, but they have had a lot of players who have had bad injury history, and honestly, that's not a good reflection on the franchise. Even though I know at times you can't control these things, there are things you can do to prevent injuries. We are so far ahead and we're so advanced scientifically and health-wise that you would think more teams would start investing into these players instead of rushing these players back from injury. Now, I'm not saying it happens all of the time, and I'm not saying it just happens at the NBA level. I feel like in a lot of leagues, there is a pressure to play for players, and these guys aren't exactly ready physically. And honestly, in the NBA, I feel like the rookie gap that some players take, like a Ben Simmons or perhaps like a Joel Embiid, to get healthy and to make sure everything is good can be so major for the long term of a career. I mean, I think Ben Simmons will be one of the first to tell you that there's no other way to adapt to being in the NBA other than being in the league. Now, I'm incredibly excited for the Pelicans because this team has actually been playing really well as of late. The Pelicans are on a win streak and they're actually showing a lot of promise. They have been good defensively, which is surprising. But we've also seen players like Lonzo Ball playing well. And if Lonzo is playing well without Zion Williamson on the floor, I can only imagine how much better he's going to get once Zion starts to play. Again, in the preseason, Zion and Lonzo had a very real connection. One surprising thing about the New Orleans Pelicans during their win streak is that this team has had a slower pace. And honestly, I think playing basketball at a slower pace can help reduce the injuries of some of their players. The Pelicans, for those that don't know, have played at an insanely fast pace over the years, and you could see disaster brewing for some players playing at this pace. What bad coaches do a lot of times, and I don't want to call Alvin Gentry a bad coach, but what these coaches do is they overload their star players with too many minutes. And you get it because you want your star players to remain on the floor for a long time. But when you're playing at these insane paces and you're playing over the span of an 82-game season with no load management, it's going to be incredibly rough for these players. I understand why people don't like load management because honestly, it would suck going to a game and your favorite player ends up a DNP at the last second. For one, NBA tickets are very expensive. For two, you have guys that travel insane lengths to come out and to see their favorite players. Now, I'm not saying that the NBA game is going to be boring without these players, but star players are a lot of the reason that these guys travel to see these games. Imagine you go to a Rockets game and Russ and Harden aren't playing that game. I think where the load management affects a lot of people is that it's not always transparent. What I like about the Pelicans is that they are going to load manage Zion, and they're going to be transparent about the load management. Hopefully they give active updates on when he's playing and when he's not. I think that David Griffin already said that he's not going to play on back-to-backs, which is going to be incredibly good. Now, right now, I want to know if you guys think the Pelicans can make the playoffs with Zion Williamson returning. They're only about 3 games back of that final spot. Perhaps they would be better off tanking, but I always like to see my favorite teams be competitive. Who's grabbing that final 8 seed in the West? Be sure to click the video on the screen right now, guys. It's me going over LaMelo Ball being offered a $100 million contract. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I'm GETLIKECOOP, and I'm out.